Hey. Hey, you. Do the thing. Do the thing. Ah. Hello, friendos. This is Chain. Welcome you back to Chain of Commander. We are going into the halfway point of the month, and I figure for today we could cover kind of an interesting topic here. Specifically, we're going to go over 5 commanders that just, they don't commander good. Hold a moment. You're interrupting the recording time. Hello, friendos. This is Chain. Welcoming you back to Chain of Commander. For today's episode, I figured we could go over a handful of commanders that have a really hard time doing their thing in EDH for a variety of reasons. Now, before we get into this list, I do ask if any of these cards, if any of these commanders inspire a deck building challenge inside you. Definitely consider using the TCG Player affiliate link in the description below to buy those cards. Won't cost you a single cent more, but it will help out the channel. That said, let's just dive right into this here. The first card I want to talk about today is actually a legendary creature that I've talked about very recently in my video on commanders that can just outright kill a player. And that is Phage the Untouchable. Phage the Untouchable is 3 black for a 4/4 legendary avatar minion. When Phage the Untouchable enters the battlefield, if you did not cast it from your hand, you lose the game. Whenever Phage deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature, it can't be regenerated. And when Phage deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So that last line of text is it's oh so tantalizing, but it's that first line of text. When Phage the Untouchable enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, you lose the game. This is the difficult line of text to get around for Phage because Phage, if they are your commander, are in your command zone, not in your hand. So if you cast it from the command zone, you die. Now, in my previous video, I discussed a couple of ways that you kind of get around that. You can use things like Command Beacon to bring Phage to your hand, or Netherborn Altar, which can also get Phage from the command zone to your hand, where you can then cast it from your hand and avoid that nasty bit of text. But I failed to mention you can take advantage of effects like Torpor Orb, which can also prevent enter the battlefield triggers from occurring. So a couple ways that you can get Phage out and get around this little built-in hoop, jump through that hoop, to go around and start killing people. Great little inclusion, but not the most difficult card to take advantage of in our list today. So let's move on to a couple of more difficult ones. The next legendary I want to talk about isn't actually just a single legendary. It's a whole-blown cycle of cards that operate very similarly from the Kamigawa block, and they are the Miojins. There are 5 Miojins total, 1 for each color. So you have Miojin of Cleansing Fire in white, Miojin of Seeing Winds in blue, Miojin of Night's Reach in black, Miojin of Infinite Rage in red, and Miojin of Life's Web in green. And all these Miojins, they operate very, very similarly. They are very expensive legendary spirits. They have multiple pips in their mana cost for their respective colors. And they all have pretty much the same 3 lines of text. When they come into play, if they were cast from your hand, they come in with a divinity counter on them. As long as they have that divinity counter on them, they are indestructible. And then all 5 have an ability that if you remove the divinity counter, you can do a pretty powerful game-changing effect. For white, if you remove the divinity counter, you destroy all other creatures. For blue, the Seeing Winds Miojin, you draw a card for each permanent you control. For black, each opponent discards their hand. For red, it destroys all the lands, and in green, you can then put as many creatures from your hand as you want onto the battlefield. So all of these are very, very powerful effects, but the issue we run into is something that we ran into with Phage. It needs to be cast from your hand to get these benefits, to even get that divinity counter in the first place, because without that divinity counter, these are essentially just vanilla creatures that can hit for like 4 or 5 at a time. Not as impressive in that sort of regard. So once again, you can use things like the Command Beacon, or in black you can use Netherborn Altar to get it to your hand, or you can just bite the bullet that one time and cast it from your command zone. And then if you have a way to bounce it or have it die so you can get it back to your hand or have a way to return it to your hand from there, you can then cast it from your hand to get that divinity counter. So a little bit more hoops you need to jump through than Phage, but it can still be done. It's just a bit tough. I'd like to see you folks try, though. You know what else I would like to see? I'd like to see you folks hit that like button. If I've been saying things that have been jiving your interest or been catching your fancy, hit that like button to show it. Now let's move on to our next one. The next commander I want to talk about here is Hakkon Stromgald Scourge. Hakkon is a legendary zombie knight. He's a 3/3. You may play Hakkon from the graveyard and the graveyard only. As long as Hakkon is in play, you may play other knights from your graveyard. And whenever Hakkon is put into the graveyard from play, you lose 2 life. That last sentence, that doesn't mean much for us. The second sentence is a cool ability to take advantage of if you have a bunch of knights that you want to get out there. But it's that first sentence that makes this card very difficult to build around. It can only be played from your graveyard. Now, Phage, you can still cast it from your command zone. The Miojins, you can still cast from your command zone. You don't get all their benefits when you do, but you can still do it. Hakkon can't even be placed on the stack when it's in the command zone. So, this one is really difficult to kind of get his thing going. Sure, you can use Command Beacon and Netherborn Altar to get it from the command zone into your hand. But even then, you still need to find a way to get it into the graveyard. So you have to have some sort of discard outlet or have a way to actually put it into the graveyard from your hand. Because until it's in the graveyard, he doesn't do jack squat. There are a lot of hoops to jump through this guy. A lot of hoops to jump through to get this guy on the field in the first place. But if any of you have pulled it off, that's pretty bonkers. Kudos to you. Now we got 2 more to talk about here, and they actually run into a little bit of a different issue than the previous 3 we had. The previous 3 all just had their issues with being cast from places other than their hand, pretty much, where being in the command zone made it difficult for them to get their abilities going. These other ones, they can come into the battlefield just fine, and just run into different issues. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean. Because first, we're going to talk about Dragonlord Kolaghan. Dragonlord Kolaghan is 4 black-red for a 6/5 legendary Elder Dragon. He has flying and haste. He gives all your other creatures haste. And whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in their graveyard, that player loses 10 life. That's the one that gets you. We are a singleton format. So, you are almost never going to see somebody cast a spell that shares a name with a spell they already have in their graveyard because they only got the one. So his big, powerful, meaty Elder Dragon ability means virtually nothing in our format. Sure, in like standard and constructed formats where people are playing 4-ofs of all their cards, that could be pretty useful, and 10 damage in any format is nothing to scoff at, but you'll never get to use them. Okay, maybe not never. There is a narrow situation. A couple months ago, I had a video about cards that allow us to break the singleton rule. Let's say you have somebody in your playgroup that plays Bruvac Mill with the Persistent Petitioners. Or maybe they're playing the Shadowborn Apostle deck with Ethrios at the helm. Or maybe you're playing against me, and I'm playing my Sidisi's Brood of Rats deck. This is, admittedly, a silver bullet to that very, very thin slice of the EDH metagame. It can wreck those decks as soon as it comes out, because those decks are essentially built on casting spells that you have bajillions of in your graveyard. Now, is it the right move to build the deck just to spite one other person's deck? No. I'll just be honest with you. No, that's probably not the best thing to do. You're going to be testing some friendships that way. But you know what is the right thing to do? Hit that subscribe button. Love to have you folks join us going forward. We like to talk about stuff like this all the time. So if you've been enjoying it, definitely hit that subscribe button to join us going forward. That said, we have one last commander here that we are going to talk about that has a hard time doing his thing. So let's get to him. This last commander I want to talk about is Mishra, Artificer Prodigy. Mishra is 1 blue, black, red for a 4/4 legendary human artificer. Whenever you play an artifact spell, you may search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a spell with the same name as that spell and put that into play. If you search your library this way, then shuffle it. This guy is another one who falls victim to the fact that we are a singleton format. And unlike Cologne, which can find some very narrow homes to wreck some other decks, there are no artifacts that you're allowed to play more than 1 copy of in EDH. That said, there's still a way to get value out of this guy here. But you need some help from your opponents. We're looking at cards like Praetor's Grasp, Gonti, Lord of Luxury, Shared Fate. These are all cards that let you play spells from your opponent's decks, which means everybody out there, they're running around with their Soul Rings, their Mana Vaults, their Mana Crypts. They got big dollars. They have all the fancy, everybody in your group has all the fancy ramp rocks, and you can steal one of theirs. Just grab it from their deck. Let's say you hit one with the Gonti, Lord of Luxury off the top. You cast your opponent's Soul Ring. This will now allow you to go get your Soul Ring from out of your deck and put it onto the battlefield. This is ramp. Not only is it ramp, this is ramp in Grixis, one of the hardest color combinations to ramp in. Now, this is a lot of dedicated space and a lot of planning around. A lot of things need to go right to get this to work even just once. But it's definitely the kind of deck that it could make the challenge worthy, because it seems like it'd be a really cool, fun way to start doing a Commander's thing. It really is. Now, I want to hear from you folks, see if any of you folks have ever tried to build a deck with one of these Commanders, and if so, hear how it went. If you haven't, would you try to build it? Do you think it's even worth the effort for some of these guys? Definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear you folks sound off. That said, thank you all very much for joining me today. This was a really cool topic to talk about, and I'll see you guys again in the future.